Hello and welcome to Vyas, India's educational channel that helps millions of students develop a new perspective every day. I am Ramesh Menon. Today we have a special edition on India's relations with China. We have a very distinguished guest today in our studio, Mr. Qamar Agha, who is not only an educationist, but a journalist and has been writing on international issues for both Indian and foreign publications. He has travelled widely and he has taught in various universities in India and abroad. He is a China expert and deals with international affairs. Welcome to the studio, Mr. Agha. Can we start talking about India's old relations with China? Relations between China and India date back to ancient times, and they were one of the world's oldest civilizations. Trade relations via the Silk Route went on for centuries, and there was absolutely no conflict.
Yeah, that's true. We have a civilizational ties, we call it, because it goes back to thousands of years. We are neighbors, just between the two countries, separated by Himalayas, and ancient ties, uninterrupted ancient ties, going on between the two countries for a very long time. It was the Buddhism, which went from India to China. Tremendous impact of Hindu religion is also you would find in China. Not only China, but the entire region, China, the Central Asia on the other one side, and the Southeast Asia on the other side. So we have this type of uninterrupted ties between the two, and that is continuing. After the several is Chinese scholars or Indian scholar going to China, and they are coming to India. Then we have a religious or pilgrims used to come from China to this place, and from here to the uninterrupted ties till the we had some problem during the colonial period. When the problem started coming between the colonial power in India and China. But otherwise, we have no problem till the independence, and even after the independence, we very smooth relation continued.
Soon after independence, India had to cope up with a neighbor like China. In 1959, the Dalai Lama came into India seeking asylum. You would probably also like to talk about Panchsheel and the role that India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru played, because he was very keen on peace with China.
You see, India was one of the first countries which recognized People's Republic of China, a communist country, after the Soviet bloc of nation. And then Nehru wanted to have very close and cooperative ties with China. His vision was that two big neighbors, could play a major role in preserving the peace and development of the whole continent, whole of Asia. That was the Nehru's vision, and wanted a very friendly ties with China. But unfortunately, things went the other way. The Chinese, they started building up. They had a different plan. Chairman Mao had expansionist policies in his mind. After establishing the ties, they wanted to annex Aksai Chin. They started building road and trying to connect. Aksai Chin is a region, it's a part of Ladakh, part of the Jammu and Kashmir state. It's a big territory, as big as Switzerland. So this part, they try to annex. This is the part which connect Xinjiang region of China with the Tibet. So first thing, the Chinese government wanted to cut off this part from India. The second thing, as you mentioned, the Tibet crisis came. Tibet, Nehru recognized as a part of China, but autonomous region of the China is problem. He wanted to continue closer and cooperative ties. Tibet is one country we had a very historical ties with the Tibetan people. The type of Buddhism in Tibet, which is very common in India, Ladakh and many other places, So, and we had a trade ties, separate trade ties with Tibet for centuries, coming, border trade, and then other part, partly then the Silk Route was also one of the factory, forging closer ties. So Nehru wanted a autonomous region to continue Tibet, but Tibet was basically annexed by China and brought into the central administration Chinese. Dalai Lama was expelled. India immediately gave him a place in India. He was an honor guest in India, and is still living in that. So all these issues come up after one after the another, leading to the war in 1962. So right from 50s till 62, we had a different type of relation. We wanted friendly ties. Nehru dubbed it as India-China bhai bhai. Yeah. Closer emphasis was on closer ties, but Chinese have a total different peg. They have a expansionist design in their mind. So that was the problem.
This 1962 war, it changed the complexion of relations between the two countries.
Definitely, completely alter. It was the biggest shock for Nehru and India. We never thought, a neighboring country like China would do such an act. And they have not only annexed our territories, but also declared many areas, disputed. That was another problem. Then the problem of refugees, the problem of many problem came between the two countries. Although a ceasefire was accorded between the two immediately after the war for almost a month, but the problems remain there. Since then, we are facing problem. China, we are demanding. India is demanding a withdrawal of Chinese troops or Chinese, from the border area and the territories which it has occupied. We are trying to normalize our ties with China, but on the other hand, China continue to demand many areas, which is falling in India. So these are the problems, which we have. We find it very difficult to deal with it. Not only we are not the only ones. All the Chinese neighbors, whether it is Vietnam or Japan and other countries in the Central Asians, they are all having problem with China. India is not alone in that way.
There was an attempt after 1984 to normalize relations. For example, there was economic cooperation.
You see, 84 was the year, when process started of normalizing. The 84 we signed a Sino-India economic free trade agreement. This was the beginning of the trade relation, and it was decided that both the countries would sort out all its outstanding issues between the two countries through peaceful negotiation. So a free trade agreement was signed between the two countries. Then 94 we signed another agreement, to avoid double taxation between the two countries, to encourage trade between the two countries. Then 90s we signed number of other agreements also. It was agreed that India and China, they have signed also peaceful sorting out a relationship in a manner which is acceptable to the both. That was, and then joint working group was also set up. So number of agreement was signed in 90s. It started with Rajiv Gandhi government and continued with Narasimha Rao, and then the Vajpayee government. All three. And then coming of the UPA government and further strengthen the ties between the two countries. So relation started improving throughout the 90s and early part of the 21st century, say till about few years back.
Both China and India are the fastest growing economies in the world. Do you think this is one of the major irritants between that is interfering with the relations between China and India?
You see, the problem came, yes, number one, India's economic growth rate when it started from 8 to 10%, and India started emerging as a major power within the Asia, that was the thing, that was the irritant. China wanted to remain the only power in this whole continent, it was, so that was the problem. Didn't like. Second thing, happening, India signing Indo-US economic cooperation, Indo-US nuclear deal, which China didn't like all these things, of forging, India's forging of a strategic ties with the Western nation. We have similar type of condition. India's option was completely changed, by in the 21st century. We wanted to emerge as a major power. Then we wanted to bring foreign investment into the country. India introduced liberal economic setup in the country. Foreign investment started coming to India, and some of the companies which earlier had invested in China diversify their investment, because they found India more convenient place for them for a number of reasons. One, the labor was available to India, skilled labor was available. Second, English speaking managerial class was available in this country, and the third factor was that we had a fairly big infrastructure available in this country, the English language, infrastructure, many other factors, the capital started coming to India, direct foreign investment came to India, technological breakthrough, and India started demanding a seat in the United Nations Security Council, all these things, China thought an irritant and become a problem. China see India as a competitor, not as a friend. The problem is there.
India is also keenly watching China's relations with Nepal, with Bangladesh, Myanmar and Sri Lanka.
Yes, there's no problem, if China develops friendly ties with Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Myanmar or any other country, that is not a problem. The problem comes when China started using these countries against India. The problem comes here, or trying to take advantage of this relation and trying to develop a military ties and then turning it against India, then the problem came, Now China is developing a port in Chittagong, using that port, and now the military vessels are also likely to visit that port. Then on the other hand, China is also similar type of relations, developing with Sri Lanka, using its port and developing, and trying to use anti-India propaganda in these countries. Similarly, in Nepal, it has also upset the balance. Nepal, we had a very friendly ties, historical ties with Nepal, and for centuries old relations we have, By disturbing, China is trying to disturb that, China is trying communist allies or Maoist allies in Nepal to hijack the whole relationship or to counter its relationship with India. That is a major problem for us. India is not opposed. If China comes and develop this region, gives economic assistance to these countries, underdeveloped nations, which India is also doing, that's not a problem. Problem is when they use against India, these countries, or the facilities it is using against India, there the problem comes. Similarly, we have seen what is happening in Pakistan.
Yeah. India is genuinely worried about China's very close ties with Pakistan, especially in the areas of military and nuclear cooperation.
It's a serious concern not only for India, but the entire international community. Now, China is developing a nuclear cooperation with Pakistan. They are going to build now Chashma 3 and Chashma 4, 2 more nuclear reactors they are going to install in the civilian. We all know the Pakistan's past. Pakistan is one country which was involved in proliferation of the nuclear material in the entire West Asia region and other countries in the world also. So that is the problem, We are not opposed, India is not opposed that if the cooperation grows in civilian nuclear activity, but the problem is Pakistan, which is using the civilian nuclear plants for its military activities or for proliferation of the nuclear material. They are the problem. China is helping Pakistan to do this thing, just to counterbalance India. Pakistan, we all know, state which is failing at the moment, lots of problems are there. Militancy is growing, these militants are becoming powerful day by day. The international community's concern is that one day these militants might get hold over these nuclear facilities or nuclear material or nuclear bomb. That's a major worry. The second thing, China is also building a road network from Tibet to Balochistan, and then they are also developing a road network from Xinjiang or Tibet to that region, the old Silk Road they are also reviving. The problem is this road is passing through the occupied Kashmir. The people of Gilgit and are opposing to this. Gilgit and Baltistan are the two regions in occupied Kashmir where the people are totally opposed to this, because this road construction has brought 11,000 Chinese troops in the region, in that area. So which is and completely altering the culture of that region. Large number of people coming, that too Chinese are settling there. Not only Chinese, then the Pakistanis and Punjabis belonging to the other castes, they are also settling in that region. So total altering the demography of that region. Then this road entering into the Baluchistan, going up to the Gauder port, where China is building a huge big port, using it for its military and also civilian purposes. The port would be used, in dealing with the West Asian countries, the Persian Gulf region, will be coming. It's very close to the Oman and other. Gauda, by the way, was earlier part of Oman, which was later Oman has sold out to Pakistan, and it's a part of basically Baluchistan. So these are the major concern for India and international community, as well as Chinese expansion, using this port for military facilities, building roads and other facilities, or using doing the developmental work which is not of use the local people. So Baluchis are opposing the other territory, the areas through which this road are passing, like Kashmir region, occupied Kashmir region, they are opposed to these things. It's not the real development of the local people is taking place, but what is happening, it's bringing the people from outside that region, and demographic change and cultural changes are taking place. They're affecting their local languages, So therefore the local people are opposing to that, and India is also opposed, because ultimately all these facilities India perceive, or we perceive it, would be one day used against India also. The idea of China is to encircle India, or through all its using all its neighbor, starting from Pakistan. Then they have also developed the Myanmar, which is another neighboring country with whom India has historical ties. China has developed military ties with them, and using Myanmar against India. There are very genuine fear of that, So that is the thing. It's a part of the Chinese design to encircle India. That's a question.
How sticky do you think is the Tibet issue? Do you think it is going to be a major irritant in the years to come? And what do you think is India's stand as far as the genuine aspirations of the Tibetans are concerned?
You see, India believes that Tibet is an autonomous region and part of China. India is fully supporting the Dalai Lama. India believes that Dalai Lama is a spiritual leader of that country. India wants Tibetan to retain its character, freely allowed to preach their religion in that area. Tibet is very close to us, because there are many holy places. The Hindu holy places are also there. Before the independence of China, thousands and thousands Hindus used to go to Tibet, Lhasa, where the famous lake is there, for pilgrimage, Now this pilgrimage has once again revived, but the number is fixed, quota is there, number of people goes every year to Tibet, So that religious ties are there with the people. Now the problem in Tibet is China is trying to alter the demography of that region. Large number of people from mainland China are migrating to Tibet and controlling the businesses and other establishment. As a result, unemployment and differences are emerging in that region. Problems are emerging. Social and cultural problems are emerging. Tibetans are protesting. India is not supporting directly the moral support, but India is supporting what Dalai Lama stands for. And in our demand is no different than the international community which is backing, because the entire international community, the Western nation, the other bodies also respect the cultural rights of the Tibetan people, or social rights or political rights of the Tibetan people. That has to be governed by them. The imposition of Chinese rule is not acceptable to anybody in Tibet and the international community also. But India wants a peaceful cooperative ties with Tibet, and wanted to remain this area to be the autonomous region where Dalai Lama should go back and continue to preach his people, and remains there He is a revered leader, respected leader of the international community and Tibetan people and the Buddhist community. He has a lot of respect there. We also respect Dalai Lama that way.
India is bidding for a seat in the United Nations Security Council, and we are hoping that China will back us.
China is promising to an extent, said that, given, but Chinese, the problem with the China, the stand is wavering, on number of issues. Before the war, Chou En-lai has given impression to the Nehru that China has no expansionist design, but in 62 we have seen a full-fledged war on that sector, both eastern and western sectors, occupying. Then China is also demanding, the Arunachal Pradesh, its sovereignty is demanding, and creating problem for us in that region. The problem with the Chinese, they say something and in the end, they do something else, that is the problem. We respect that China's sentiment, that China has promised that it will support India's. The reason is China is doing, because large number of international community is supporting India, a permanent seat in Security Council. So hopefully the international pressure is also working on China. We hope that Chinese will support India's seat in Security Council.
What do you think India should do to improve relations with China? We can't ignore China and the kind of activities that it is doing in this region.
You see, we have made it abundantly clear that the relation between the two countries can be sorted out only through peaceful negotiation based on mutual respect of each other. War is completely ruled out. Nobody wants war with China, and at least in this country nobody wants. China also cannot afford to have. Both are nuclear weapon states, and therefore the war is not. Now the thing is that there is need to be certain accommodation between the two, which China is not doing. We are not the ones who are having problem with the China. China is having problem in the South China Sea with Japan. It is demanding, it is claiming the territories of some islands, which is oil-rich region of Japan. Then in South, in the other part, it is claiming a territory of Vietnam. This area is also oil-rich. 4 major states are there, in the south. These are Vietnam, then Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. This is another oil-rich region. The Chinese neighbor are having problem. The problem is Chinese expansionist design is a major problem. China is having also problem with the other countries in Central Asia. Then China is not willing to give rights to minorities, the Muslim minorities in Xinjiang region, or the Buddhist minority, or the Tibetan minority in Tibet, who are Buddhist, also Buddhist. These are the problem, keep coming. We want a friendly relation. We have developed a model that is a perfect model, I suppose, that according to this model, will continue to negotiate with Pakistan. The border disputes between the two countries with China continue to discussion. More than 5 joint working groups have taken place, and number of other ministerial level meetings have taken place. Not much has come out up till now. Government of India wants forces should withdraw from the border. Chinese forces should withdraw from the Chinese border. They should stop incursion into the India, and continue to grow trade relations between the two. The trade is growing between the two countries. Now we have it was started 84, and now we have a trade. In 2008, the trade between the two countries was almost more than $51 billion. Last year it was come down to $43 billion, and this year 2010 it's going to rise up to, is expected to go up to $60 billion between the two countries. So as far as trade is concerned, which is growing, it's in the mutual interest of both the countries. But whereas the political side, when it comes, the problem comes. Chinese expansion is designed. China doesn't want India as growing clout in the international community. So these are the concern, and we are trying to address this concern. We are trying to tell China that India doesn't pose any threat. We not only that, we are trying to convince China together, we can work for the greater Asian security and peace and development.
This has actually been a very enlightening discussion. We discussed a host of subjects, and there were very interesting responses from you. I am sure the viewers also learnt a lot from this discussion, and see you soon on Vyas channel again. Goodbye and take care.